An ANZAC Day like no other. Coronavirus restrictions prevent large ceremonies. And people turn out regardless, holding their own events at home. A 10th person dies from COVID-19 in Tasmania, with more than a dozen new cases across the country. While internationally, the death toll nears 200,000, more than a quarter are in the United States. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Gemma, Veness. An intimate national commemorative service has been held at the Australian War Memorial in Canberra today, with the official dawn service cancelled due to the coronavirus outbreak. Tom Lowry reports.
It is a very different ANZAC Day here at the Australian War Memorial in Canberra. Ordinarily, as many as 35,000 people would gather on ANZAC Parade for the dawn service in the stillness and blackness of an ANZAC Day morning in the ACT. But today, just a handful of Australia's most senior dignitaries gathered for a commemorative service inside the War Memorial itself. The context wasn't ignored by the occasion. Many noted how the values that ANZAC Day represents are so relevant during today's COVID-19 pandemic, those of unity and coming together as a nation in a time of crisis. The Prime Minister also reflected upon the reality that this isn't the first ANZAC Day to be held during a global pandemic, thinking back to the 1919 Spanish flu. Also reflecting on a small ANZAC Day dawn service held on the shores of Gallipoli and what can be learned from that service that we can bring into today.
There was no pomp at that little service. There were no dignitaries, no bands, just the sound of lapping water on a lonely shore. One said of that little service, it was the real thing. And so our remembrances today, small, quiet and homely, will be.
Only some of the country's most senior dignitaries came along for this morning's service. The Governor-General, the Prime Minister, the Leader of the Opposition, Anthony Albanese, the High Commissioner of New Zealand, the Chair of the Australian War Memorial and representatives from both Legacy and the RSL, along with a number of veterans there to represent their communities too. It was a small, intimate and sombre occasion, but also a special one during today's times.
ANZAC Day presents an opportunity to pause and reflect. It's also a chance to support veterans. Reporter Siobhan Henu has more from Townsville in Queensland.
Townsville is Australia's biggest garrison city. 3rd Brigade is based up here at ANZAC Barracks, so about 4,000 odd serving soldiers, and of course that huge veteran community too. From Vietnam all the way through to Iraq, Afghanistan, East Timor, and all the defence families. So this is usually a huge day of year here, and without the parades through the main streets and all the ceremonies that you usually see at dawn at the cenotaph behind me and the rest, people have had to be a little bit inventive, and some of the diggers out at the 3rd Battalion Royal Australian Regiment at the barracks had come up with an idea to connect with veterans who might need a little bit of reaching out, a little bit of connection in the lead up to ANZAC Day. So they all took to their mobile phones and, socially distanced of course, they called several hundred veterans from all those conflicts, different ages, different generations, just kind of saying hello, how you going, checking in on perhaps people that they'd never talked to before. But the idea is to really ease that sense of isolation that veterans can be susceptible to around ANZAC Day, and to remind them that while they might be marking the day alone, they're certainly not forgotten. Now, Bob Dabinet is the president of the 3RAR Association. And it was interesting, he said that while the whole project was aimed at the diggers providing support and confidence to the veterans, sometimes it worked the other way around. Have a listen.
They get to identify where they themselves fit in the hierarchy of being a veteran and a member of the veteran community. Every soldier wants to identify that they are good enough, fit the bill. And I've got to tell you, from my experience of over 36 years in the military, they do.
There's been a steady stream of people to the cenotaph from dawn onwards today. Very respectful, quiet. People are kind of dedicating wreaths. I've seen some hand-painted stones and things like that. So very much a sense of reverence, a little bit of kind of added solemnity and perhaps sadness that people haven't been able to gather shoulder to shoulder. The other interesting thing that's happening in town is that one of Australia's biggest warships, the HMAS Adelaide, has docked here at the moment. So a lot of sailors and some soldiers as well, they would usually have shore leave and they'd usually be marking Anzac Day here as well. But because of coronavirus fears, that ship is currently exercising up and down off the Queensland coast. And so all those soldiers and sailors have been told they have to stay on the ship. No one's allowed on or off while they're here. And so that's yet another impact of this coronavirus, preventing, people from all levels of society, connected to defence or not, from doing what we usually do on Anzac Day.
Anzac Day services in Western Australia usually draw some of the largest crowds in the nation. Despite all memorials being closed, including the state's main one in Kings Park, thousands of West Australians managed to participate in dawn services by gathering outside their homes in quiet contemplation. Joanna Manar reports.
Usually the streets behind me are packed with thousands of people who've gathered for the Anzac Day parade to cheer and clap on veterans and serving members of the Defence Force. However, this year the streets remained emptied as all Anzac Day services across the state were cancelled because of coronavirus restrictions. That included the dawn service at the War Memorial in Kings Park, which usually attracts a crowd of tens of thousands. This year there was only a handful of people, among them police officers, to ensure there were no illegal large gatherings. While the restrictions kept the crowds away, they did not stop the commemorations, with streets across the state hosting their own dawn services, as people, young and old, gathered at the end of their driveways or on their balconies to remember. Among them was World War II veteran Kevin Jones, who at 95 honoured the fallen from his home. In another suburb across Perth, retired Army bugler David Scott, a recipient of the 2020 Anzac of the Year Award, performed the last post. He's done the same at Anzac Day services across the world, including Gallipoli. He said it was just as important today.
My grandfather fought on the Western Front, and it's just a great opportunity to say thank you to those sort of people, people that have been before us and prepared to put their life on the line for us. I don't think we'd be doing this today if they hadn't.
He, like everyone else, will be hoping the crowds will be back next year.
A 10th Tasmanian has died of coronavirus. A 90-year-old man from the state's northwest died yesterday at the Mercy Hospital, the community hospital. 9 out of 10 Tasmanian COVID-19 deaths have been people from the northwest of the state. Premier Peter Gutwein says his thoughts are with the man's family.
On behalf of the Tasmanian Government, I'd like to extend my condolences and deep sorrow to the family of the 10th victim to coronavirus, a 90-year-old man who was being cared for on the northwest coast. From myself personally, from the government and from the people of Tasmania, we're so very sorry for your loss.
Experts say an explosion of coronavirus cases in Tasmania's northwest should serve as a warning to the rest of the country about the risk of outbreaks as the number of recorded cases plateaus. Investigations into the outbreak are continuing, but there are warnings such a cluster could occur anywhere if measures are rolled back too quickly.
Last month, Tasmania was ahead of the game. The island at the bottom of the world had acted quickly against the threat of coronavirus.
It was very encouraging that Tasmania moved swiftly to establish control over its borders and to cut down travel into the state.
The dream of an island cut off from the pandemic was soon shattered.
A Tasmanian hospital is now in the grips of a coronavirus outbreak.
Tasmania's first death was a Ruby Princess cruise ship passenger who died at the Burnie Hospital. More cases soon emerged, including dozens of hospital workers and patients. As the rest of the country experienced a gradual flattening, Tasmania's cases kept growing, with the northwest becoming a pandemic hotspot. 2 hospitals were shut down and the Defence Force was called in. Lyndon Hunter is among 5,000 locals in quarantine because his wife is a hospital worker.
I think Tasmanians would probably expect it to be one of the last places, to be honest. We're on an island state. It's mall.
Tasmania has had one of the lowest testing rates in the country, and the northwest's older population made it a high-risk area. But experts say it's an example of how quickly an outbreak could happen anywhere, especially if states and territories wind back restrictions or testing too soon. Bill Botell was an architect of Australia's response to the HIV/AIDS epidemic.
As long as the virus remains in Australia, we will be susceptible to these outbreaks and clusters.
Professor of Epidemiology Mary Louise McLaws says any relaxing of restrictions needs to be informed.
It needs to be very careful and very slow, but it really shouldn't be done until there's proactive testing in the community.
Leaving a long road ahead. Ellen Coulter, ABC News.
New South Wales Health Minister Brad Hazzard has expressed his disappointment in people who ignored social distancing rules on Sydney beaches. Clovelly, Coogee and Maroubra beaches were temporarily opened for exercise this morning. The beaches could only be accessed from 6 to 9 o'clock after people flouted restrictions, which led to their closure yesterday. The beaches are closed again and Randwick Council will reassess the situation on Monday.
I have to express as New South Wales Health Minister a degree of disappointment and agitation about the fact that some people, when the rules are relaxed, when we try and do the right thing by giving people an opportunity to have some outside exercise, that people are disregarding the very strong message of social distancing.
There are growing questions about the health of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, with China sending a medical team given conflicting reports on his condition after surgery. China correspondent Bill Birtles joins me now from Beijing. And Bill, do we know that these reports of China sending a delegation are accurate?
Gemma, we can't have 100% confirmation because with both North Korea and China, we're dealing with two incredibly secretive states, particularly North Korea. But two things. First of all, the Reuters news agency says it has confirmed this with 3 separate sources. But more importantly, China's government has been asked this question about sending a delegation of medical experts to North Korea. And the answer is, we'll keep you updated. Now, normally, when China's government believes that a Western media report involving China is wrong, it is very happy to send its officials out publicly to reject it. In this case, China's government is not rejecting that report and, in fact, using language which indicates that certainly something is going on. And so at this point, while we don't have 100% confirmation, the rumour mill here in Beijing is in overdrive. I've, for a couple of days now, heard multiple people tell me about the medical team, but it's only up until now that we have what appears to be confirmation from multiple sources who are well placed talking to the Reuters news agency.
What do we know of the North Korean leader's condition?
Not much, except that a defector site earlier this week reported that Kim Jong-un underwent some sort of surgery. The speculation is that it was a heart procedure. This was reported by one source on a defector website. The US network CNN, citing an American intelligence source, reported this. It's been very confusing over the past few days because first of all, the South Korean government appeared to reject those reports, saying that there was nothing abnormal that it was detecting from North Korea. Then President Trump himself said he believed CNN's report was fake news, only for the US Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, to yesterday say, look, we don't actually have any information, but we are monitoring it very closely. Now, with what appears to be confirmation that a Chinese medical team has flown to North Korea, we have very good reason to believe it is not business as usual. But the reports from people in Pyongyang say that so far there's nothing abnormal about the city itself. And although I haven't had a chance yet today to go down to the North Korean embassy here in Beijing, when I did go past, I go past it nearly every day, it's near the ABC bureau, there's no additional security presence from the Chinese side.
Is this trip then likely to shed any more light on Kim Jong-un's condition?
You would imagine that the Chinese government now is coming under pressure to at least explain domestically what is going on, because as I said, the rumour mill here in Beijing is absolutely in overdrive. The reason there's so much speculation is that unverified screenshots have been circulating on the Chinese internet, supposedly from Chinese medical doctors who have been leaking information. Now, I'm not going to go too much into what those rumours are saying because it is just pure speculation and it's not verified. But you now have not just outside China, but a huge amount of people in China asking its own government, is this true? What's going on? So we expect in the coming days to find out. You do have to remember when Kim Jong-un's father, Kim Jong-il, died, there was no lead-up. It was a sudden announcement. So whether Kim Jong-un is in a bad condition after surgery, whether he's okay, or whether the situation's even worse than that, it wouldn't be surprising that there is a huge degree of secrecy about it initially. The question is now, Gemma, when are we going to actually hear from an official source about what's going on?
China correspondent Bill Birtles, thank you. The coronavirus death toll in the US is now more than 50,000. The worrying figure continues to mount as the US president goes on the defensive after suggesting the virus could be treated by injecting disinfectant. Donald Trump's comments sparked a strong rebuke from doctors.
Controversially, some of Florida's beaches reopened last week, but maybe it was a smart thing to do. According to new research conducted by US government scientists, sunlight, heat and humidity dramatically reduce the life of coronavirus in the air and on hard surfaces. The scientists said it acted as a powerful disinfectant. And that led the president to muse on whether disinfectant could be used inside the human body to kill the virus.
And then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that? By injection inside or almost a cleaning, because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number of the lungs, so it'd be interesting to check that.
The president's chief medical advisor looked as though she'd have liked Harry Potter's cloak of invisibility.
In a minute, 1 minute.
New Lysol spray disinfectant.
For over a century, Lysol has been one of America's top-selling brands of bleach. But today, in 2020, the manufacturers felt forced to issue a statement saying, under no circumstances should people ingest disinfectant. Doctors, health professionals and politicians are similarly disbelieving.
So very clearly, disinfectants are not intended for ingestion, either by mouth, by ears, by breathing them in any way, shape or form.
Okay, thank you.
But today the president has sought to explain away the controversy by asserting that he wasn't actually being serious.
But I was asking a very sarcastic question to the reporters in the room about disinfectant on the inside. But it does kill it, and it would kill it on the hands, and that would make things much better. That was done in the form of a sarcastic question to the reporters.
Another question being asked forcibly is whether now is the right time to reopen the US economy. In Georgia today, hairdressers, nail salons, tattoo parlours were able to resume business, even though coronavirus is still a serious problem in the state.
World leaders have pledged more cooperation to speed up the search for a coronavirus vaccine. In a global summit via video link, they've also promised to ensure all countries have equal access to treatment. Nick Dole reports from London.
Here in the UK, the death toll continues to rise, up another 768 in the last 24 hours, and that doesn't include care homes. Those sorts of figures really do underscore the urgent global need to find either a vaccine or some sort of a treatment for the coronavirus, which has killed close to 200,000 people. The World Health Organization has held a global summit via video conference. The French President Emmanuel Macron, the German Chancellor Angela Merkel and the acting UK leader Dominic Raab were among those participating, along with leaders from Europe, Africa and the Americas. They've promised a better system for sharing information about potential treatments and vaccines, and they've also pledged to ensure that all countries have access to those treatments when they're found, not just the wealthy nations who can afford them.
In order to counter COVID-19, we need vaccines, effective treatments, and fast and reliable tests. We need them soon. And most importantly, everybody needs them.
The United States wasn't represented in this conference. US President Donald Trump has, of course, been critical of the World Health Organization, accusing it of being China-centric, and he's said that he'll be suspending funding. But the WHO chief has defended his organisation and the way that it's responded to the crisis.
Since January, WHO has been working with thousands of researchers all over the world to accelerate and track vaccine development, from developing animal models to clinical trial designs and everything in between.
Vaccine trials are already underway globally. Here in the UK, human trials on a vaccine began yesterday, and the UK will host another global virtual summit next month with the aim of raising around $14 billion for the global scientific effort.
The AFL's ANZAC Day ceremony has gone ahead despite the COVID-19 shutdown. Reporter Peter Lusted has more from Melbourne.
Well, there was no match played today. The AFL still wanted to pay their respects. So, as it would have occurred on game day, the Ode of Remembrance was still recited at the MCG, while the bugle also played at the last post. It's normally such an emotional moment on ANZAC Day as 90,000 people are silent compared to the deafening noise of when the game starts. Today it was a much more eerie scenario as the bugle echoed through the stands. The Pies and Bombers match has become a real staple of ANZAC Day commemorations in Melbourne. The game was first played in 1995, the brainchild of Exeter coach Kevin Sheedy. 95,000 fans were inside the MCG and more were locked out outside. The game that day was a draw, and there's been many classics since. In 2009, David Zaharakis kicked a goal late to win the game for Essendon. In 2012, Jared Blair was the hero for Collingwood in similar circumstances. While fans weren't able to savour any classic moments today, they did still pay their respects to the Anzacs, taking to social media with the hashtag #Stand2.
Imagine you wanted to defend Australia in war but were told you were too black to join the Australian Army. That's what happened to Indigenous soldiers who wanted to fight in World War I, including 3 men from northern New South Wales who defied authorities to join the Army. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander viewers are advised this story contains images of people who have died.
Arthur Brown's military service is a source of immense pride to his great-niece, Jackie MacDonald of the Bundjalung Nation. She says the desire to protect traditional lands was an important motivation to Indigenous soldiers.
I think their obligation to country was foremost in their minds.
The Army initially turned down Arthur Brown and his good mate Arthur Williams because they were considered too black, but they eventually got through. Another Arthur, Sinclair, was accepted because his skin was lighter.
They had to prove that there was English ancestry in at least one parent. So, or they would say they were from Maori descent.
Mr Brown and Mr Sinclair were among 18 Indigenous recruits from the One Street, then known as Solomon's Row in Murwillumbah. The 3 mates became famous within their community and were known as the 3 Black Arthurs.
3 young men who wanted to join the war and go off and fight for their country.
Arthur Brown and Arthur Sinclair fought at Gallipoli, and Mr Brown died in battle, aged just 18.
Our Arthur, sadly, he was killed on Hill 971.
Arthur Williams and Arthur Sinclair returned injured to the racism they'd encountered before leaving.
The Aboriginal soldiers, particularly my grandfather, wasn't allowed to go into the pubs to drink.
And whilst they were equal on the battlefield, they weren't treated as equals when they came home. That's the sad part.
The ban on Aboriginal men serving was lifted in 1917. By then, many had already died on the battlefields. Donna Harper, ABC News, Murwillumbah.
There are more than 2,000 Australian Defence Force personnel deployed on operations across the globe. Here are some of their ANZAC messages.
G'day, I'm Thomas Ryan. I'm here with the C-130 maintainers maintaining the Hercules in the Middle East. This ANZAC Day I'll be working here. I'd like to give a big shout out to my girlfriend Daniela and my baby daughter Michaela, and I hope everyone pauses today to remember those who have served before us and those that are currently serving here in the Middle East.
Hi, I'm Able Seaman Shannon Sheldrake and I'm deployed to Operation Manitow on board HMAS Toowoomba. Just want to give a shout out to my family and friends back home. I love and miss you very much. And to my pop, who's a Vietnam veteran, you're my hero and my #1 supporter, and I wish we were spending ANZAC Day together.
G'day guys, I'm Able Seaman Boatswain's mate Shane Chalice on board HMAS Toowoomba. This ANZAC Day I'll be in the Middle East on Operation Manitow. ANZAC Day for me is not just about watching Collingwood spank the Bombers, it's about remembering the past and present serving members and their sacrifices that they and their families have made.
For me, ANZAC Day means an opportunity to reflect and for us to honour the proud heritage of the people who have come before us.
Hi, my name is Private Paige Millhouse. This ANZAC Day, I'll be serving at Australia's main operating base within the Middle East. I'd just like to say a thank you to my friends, family and colleagues back at home who have continued to support us. We'll be thinking of you.
For me, ANZAC Day is a day to pause and remember those who came before us, those who are with us today and those who will come to us in the future, the sacrifices we've made, mateship, hard work and our duty for our country.
Hi, my name is Flight Lieutenant Jason Shapcott and I'll be spending this ANZAC Day deployed to the Middle East area of operations. I'd like to give a special shout out to my wife Renee and my 3 daughters, Rachel, Megan and Evie, and an extra special shout out to the family, students and staff of Carolee Community School in Perth, Western Australia.
And we're getting a glorious flood of pictures and video of how people are marking ANZAC Day. Thank you to all these people who have been in touch with us. You're all part of a great show of national spirit where people have been coming together to observe a ritual despite having to be physically distanced. And there have been thousands of people with you doing the same. These pictures will form part of a digital national treasure trove of how we all marked a most unusual ANZAC Day 2020. Let's check the weather around the capital cities tomorrow. Mostly sunny in Brisbane, partly cloudy in Sydney, a shower or 2 in Canberra and Melbourne, a windy day on the way for Hobart. The rain will be clearing in Melbourne, partly cloudy in Perth and mostly sunny in Darwin, a top of 35 degrees. That is the latest from ABC News. I'm Gemma Veness and stay with us.